I think, well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about, the elephant in the room here, which is the ice storm that happened. Hopefully it looks like some of the trees around here did okay. We'll see what we see over there when we get to the apples. But there's some breakage on here. And one of the first things you do any time you're out pruning is called the 3 Ds. And that's dead, diseased, and damaged wood. So that's the first thing you can do before you don't have to do a lot of thinking about those 3 things. So just take out all the dead, diseased, and damaged wood. Quick second, I'll talk about the tools. Generally you're gonna need some loppers for fruit tree pruning. Okay, these are loppers. They come in different sizes. You can have wooden handles or metal handles. Really, not a huge difference in performance between the types of handles. The longer the handle, the easier it is going to be to get the larger limbs. But longer handles can sometimes be harder to get up into trees if there's a lot of growth. They don't fit up in there as well. The wooden, handles have a little bit more give, so it might be a little easier on your if you're doing a lot of pruning. They all have rubber bumpers, which is an important feature. If you happen to be looking at some that don't have rubber bumper there, then you don't want those. But there's just there are aspects of the way these are designed that are kind of for ergonomics. It's to make your life better, your joints and body parts that are involved in this process. You want them to be as happy as possible, and so the wooden handles that give a little bit more with every cut, a little bit easier on your body, and the rubber bumpers are also there for that purpose too. But these are going to be heavier with the wooden handles. The aluminum handles are lighter, so kind of up to you which of those things you prefer. Saws. Well, I guess after I talk about loppers, I'll talk about hand pruners. This is like these hand pruners. You're going to need these no matter what. You can actually do a lot of pruning with one of these. You don't necessarily have to have loppers. And important things about these are called bypass pruners, which means that there's a blade that moves past this other surface. Okay, the single blade moves past this other surface rather than bumping into it. There's another kind of pruner called an anvil pruner where the blade comes up against the anvil part of it, and for a lot of our pruning that's not preferred because it tends to crush one side of the stem as you're cutting through it. This is much better for fruit trees. You don't want to crush any part of that tissue. You want that wound that you're making to heal quickly, right? So bypass pruners, make sure they're sharp and clean. Generally, if it has a replaceable blade like this one does, it's easier to keep for many years. Keep it sharp and clean. If it doesn't have a replaceable blade, you just have to replace the shears every so often. Honestly, of course, I'm not managing an orchard. I'm not doing a ton of pruning every year. A few trees in my backyard and these kind of workshops, but I haven't had to sharpen mine really for many years. The blades on a high quality pruner will last for a really long time.
Do you do something to take care of them? Just clean them?
Clean them, yeah. Cleaning them, you don't want to leave them dirty. They can get rusty.
No oiling?
Cleaning them and drying them. Yeah, a little bit of oil.
What are you cleaning with?
Just soap and water, but you do need to re-oil them if you clean them that way because it takes the oil off. And I'll talk about, we're over at the apples, we'll talk about some other stuff related to that, but saws are handy too for the larger limbs. Okay, lots of different kinds of saws that are out there, and I don't really have complaints about any of them. usually you want something like this for the ones that are closer to the ground. And depending on what kind of trees you're dealing with, you might want a larger one, like a pole pruner. This one is not a combination. A lot of ones you see on the market are a combination pruner where it has like a little lopper tool that you can pull the rope and it cuts. And that's handy. The problem with having the saw and the lopper tool on the same thing is sometimes if you're up and there's a lot of growth in a tree and it's really dense, it's hard to move that around and it gets tangled up on stuff. So if you can do it, you know, it might be better to have two separate tools for those two different jobs, but a lot of people find it more convenient to have a combination, and that's okay too. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of this broken limb. All your cuts want to be protecting what's called the branch collar. Okay, that's this wrinkly part. It's kind of between the trunk and the branch. All right, you want to protect that. You don't want to cut into that branch collar, but you want to cut just beyond it, so that the tree can heal. You can see where this cut healed really nicely. It healed over completely. These little bumps. That's what you want. It's a good situation. You don't want to leave a stub. I don't have any stubs per se on this one, but a stub would be dead wood hanging out there beyond the pruning cut. You'll get stubs if you make a cut like out here. If there's not a bud, so look for buds along the shoot, and if you're making any kind of cut that's out here away from the place where the shoot intersects with the next branch or stem, look for buds and try to make a cut near a bud, because otherwise you'll end up with a stub. It's like there's a bud here. I'm not going to do this, but if I wanted to shorten this shoot, I would cut just above that bud, and then the shoot would heal and the bud would break and we'd have a new growth coming out this way. So think about where the buds are and what's going to happen after you do the cut. And I'm going to remove this one right up as close to the trunk as I can get without hitting that branch collar. Okay. You know, you'll often be cutting on an angle just because sometimes you just don't have a choice because of the way the tool fits in there. But angles are nice too because it keeps water. If you're cutting something up higher, you don't want to really cut it straight across because rainwater and stuff will gather there and can create rot type things. So cutting at an angle is nice for that purpose. Water will shed off of it. You don't want to cut at an extreme angle if you can help it because it creates a larger wound. Right? So kind of a moderate angle is good. So any other dead, let's see. Here's a broken one right here. That one off.
What type of tree is that? Cherry?
It's a cherry.
Why is it growing crooked like that?
Well, that's a good question. It really took off last year. So I've seen some dead. I'm going to nip off all this dead here. There's not too much here in the way of dead, diseased, or damaged. Did I miss anything? Oh, here's a dead one.
So it's the best time to prune early spring.
What about this right here?
Oh, that is broken. Holy cow. All right.
Good eye, good eye.
So yeah, we're gonna want to take that off, and you know, this is one of those kind of hope for the best situations because it's a break that happened, you know, in kind of an ugly way, and we'll see a lot of that probably today, and you all probably see it in your yards. And you just gonna have to do your best to judge what's gonna happen after I remove that limb. I think I can do that. There's a wound here still from the break that happened, but I think that it's a pretty small surface area that's exposed, and I think that tree is going to be able to recover. you know, we could, pruning is a decision-making process, and we could make a different choice there. We could take it off here. That would be a pretty extreme decision, but it's something we could do. You know, I think, unfortunately, that kind of leaves this side of the tree pretty bare right now. Now we've got a limb over here that's going to fill that space. You know, trees will sometimes put on, we call it adventitious shoot that would come out and fill that space potentially. It might not. You know, it's.
Do you
Has it been
suggest
trimmed
using
a few
any?
times? Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Go
two
ahead.
questions at the same time.
Has it been trimmed a few times?
It has. I've trimmed this myself a few times, yeah. And you know, we're kind of going for here was a modified central leader, which is what a lot of our tart cherry growers prune their trees into. It's challenging though because we came at this tree, like I showed that picture, if you remember, in the apple, you know, you plant your apple tree and there's all these branches and you kind of have to choose from what you have. And that's what we've been doing over the years with this one. And you know, it's one of those situations where it's not been giving us any growth over here that's really going to be a good scaffold. So it's becoming kind of this, I mean, it's really growing on kind of a plane where there's like a lot of growth this way and that way and up. And
Is it producing a lot of fruit?
I don't.
Yes, it does. It does. The birds love it. They get to it first every year.
That usually happens with cherries.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm a bit of a lost as far as what to do because we do have that wound over here. If I remove that, then this is going to be kind of your leader on this tree, and that's not ideal because it's going to be really weird and lopsided. And so I want to leave this on and see what happens with it. I'm actually almost inclined to take this one off because it just doesn't seem like it's in the right place. It's shading out this one, you know, but...
Do you suggest any protectant over the wound covers?
No.
Nothing.
Nope. You want that that pruning cut to heal naturally without any interference from us. The air and light are what you want to reach it, and so you want it to dry out, and you want it to have exposure to light because that'll keep diseases out of it. So we got this dead disease and damage. We took care of that, and that's the point where you can kind of step back and look and think about other cuts you might want to make. Okay. Generally, what things you want to do are to thin the canopy to let air and light in. This is not a great example just because of the way it's kind of lopsided. So it's not a great example of a tree that I think we wanted to keep this one to kind of get some growth on this side. So I'm going to leave it there. But I'm going to nip this off because it's dead at the tip. Okay.
Can I pose a question to you about this? So the way I look at this is this branch is taking 50% of what's coming up, nutrients and water wise. If we really wanted to produce something on this side, give space for this one, I would get rid of it.
Yeah, that's what I
And
want.
that would
yeah.
really put a lot of energy in this and that.
Yeah, and that.
Fair? Or
Well,
not?
that's what I was inclined to do, except for this break here,
Right.
because we might lose this,
Wait a year?
and then wait a year. Yeah, that's always a good thing that you can do is wait and see. There can even be some summer pruning, but you know, what I am going to do is I'm going to think about things that are crossing over each other, and
I was just going to ask about that. Are you concerned early with branches that are rubbing?
rubbing. Yeah, anything that rubs,
Okay, yeah.
crosses over another branch. Those are kind of easy ones to take out right away.
Yeah.
You know, things that are either shading things out or that are being shaded. So you kind of sometimes you make a choice. Do I want to take the one that's shading the other branch, or Do I want to take out the one that's being shaded out and not really going to do a whole lot anyway? But just think about how light is going to come in here, and you want to maximize light exposure to all the buds. If the buds are receiving sunlight, and this is thinking actually ahead to later in the season, those new buds that are developing later in the summer, if they're getting sunlight, they're going to make a choice as they're developing. I'm going to be a fruit bud next year. If they're shaded, they make a choice. I'm going to be a vegetative bud next year. So the more light you have entering the canopy late in the season, the more fruit buds you're going to get next year, the more flowers you're going to get next year. So that's a big thing to think about. Another thing to think about is air flowing through to improve disease, reduce disease problems. So air and light getting into the canopy are really important. Everybody prunes a little different, so, and they're just really, a lot of times it comes down to your gut about a certain thing. It's like, I don't like this one, I like this one over here. The things you don't want to do is you don't want to do a lot of those heading cuts, which I talked about on the inside, where you don't want to nip the tip off. There are special situations where you might do something like that, but generally speaking, no. You don't want to do that. So, just because I don't want to be here all day, I want to talk about the apples, too. And I'm going to kind of make some quick choices and decisions here. And feel free to ask me why I did a certain thing or not. But sometimes, like I said, it's just I didn't like the look of that branch. But a lot of these, it's because they're shading or rubbing on other ones. You don't want to take out too much either, especially with some of like our apple trees. If you over prune, they end up putting on a lot of new growth that's weaker, and that's something you don't want going on either.
It's not a dwarf tree, is it?
It's a well, we don't really know much about this tree, do we?
I believe it's a Montmorency.
Okay, yeah, we're pretty sure it's a tart cherry, and that it's well, we know it produces a lot of fruit, so that's good.
Now, do you want to burn what you prune off of here? Or?
Yeah, we should. I think we usually just leave it on the ground, but
It gets picked up.
I'm kind of cleaning out the center, Tart cherry is a little funny because, like I said, we don't really do them in an open center or a central leader. It's kind of a combo. You can do them in an open center if you want to. But
What I'll do too is I have photos of this tree from last year when we did this exact thing. So when I post the recording and stuff, I'll post the pictures I have of this
Are you
tree.
posting it on Facebook or
It'll be on our website, and I'll link it to Facebook. It'll actually be on YouTube, but it'll be on our website.
perfect.
But it got quite a bit taller because he took off a very large
Oh, is that? Yeah.
central leader last year,
Very- that's what happened.
and it got quite a bit taller.
so it was able to get nutrients to the
Yeah. And you can stop whenever you want, Nate. It's, you're
Yeah,
good.
That's one of the things is you gotta rein yourself in. Like I could be here all day probably, but you get to a certain point where you just kind of have to say it. That's enough, and you can always come back next year.
Do you focus much on stump sprouts or trunk sprouts that are low, possibly below the grass?
Oh yeah,
On the base?
this one. These are sumac or something. Yeah,
it doesn't
that's
look
something
like it's from
you
the tree.
see that
but
more.
some might
You
be.
see that more with apples usually. But if you do have anything down there, you do want to take it off, unless you're trying to grow a new tree. But most of the time you're not. So, let's move down to the apples because